this is the third year that they'll go to Sweden and play games. What do you think the legacy of that's been? You've been involved in it. You got to see it firsthand. After 3 years, going home and kind of accessing it. What do you think the legacy of the NHL going to play regular season games in Sweden has been?
I think it's been okay. It hasn't been great. Obviously, if there's Swedish players involved, and Detroit, I think, went last year. It's a huge success, and they know their players. So if a team comes that doesn't have the huge stars, it's not the same interest. Because they watch the games all the time on TV, and it's not the same hype. But I still believe it's good to get out there and let the people see the game close, up hand, and see the difference between the NHL and the Swedish league. And so I think it's been good for the most part.
So would you say you agree or disagree with what Glenn Healy said about the Premier Series not necessarily being a success for the NHL?
Well, I think he's speaking financially, and I don't know the numbers at all.
Okay.
But I'm just speaking of talking to people and reading the Swedish papers, what they think about it. And it's tough to make it work, logistically and financially and everything. Glenn was also speaking about not connecting with the fans in the way you should, and that's part of, maybe if you go there, you should spend a week in the city so you can maybe play some exhibition games and whatnot. But it takes time, and it's hard to fit into the schedule. So, but overall, I think it's been a good exposure for us.
Danny, they asked you about fighting, and I got the sense that even after 15 years in the NHL, you still don't 100% understand the notion of, even if the team interviews, two guys playing a minute and a half of a game and going out and fighting because it's just something they should do. Am I correct on that a little bit?
Yes, you are. I believe that doesn't really serve a purpose. I understand, and no problem at all with fighting at times where it's justified. And it is a very intense game, and it always has been. So I don't think you can take that away. But the stage fights, I'm not a fan of.
Some of Fetisov's talked about how they were developing junior leagues over there now. And if you look at last season, there were only about 24, 25 Russian players who played regularly. I think there was 30-something played some games. Are we reaching the point, if the KHL continues to climb, that obviously Ovechkin has a long time, that we might not have any Russians in this league? And if so, how would you feel about that? I mean, the best league in the world with no Russians.
How would I feel about that? I guess it's good that hockey is growing. I mean, there should be competition. Everybody benefits from competition. I don't see that happening right now. If there's a Russian player that are not getting the role he wants, he can go to Russia and live a great life and make good money there too. So why not? Good for him. But obviously, I would like to see all the best players here, because that's where I play. But I don't see competition as a bad thing.
The other thing I wanted to ask you too is, if the KHL continues to improve, and let's say it gets close to the NHL, he talked about that he thought that most players would want to stay in Europe. As a European yourself, is that true? I mean, if that league was very good, would Swedish players rather play a little closer to home? I mean, still it's a long,
Well, if I had the option, and knowing that, say that there was a European league that was similar to the NHL in terms of competition, of course I would play it. That's no question. And you could ask the North Americans the opposite question. Say European league was better than the North American, would they go there? Of course they would.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a question. You see a lot of North American players that maybe are, at the end of their career, or not good enough. They go to Europe and play, and they love it as well. As we come over here and love it. But when you're young, 18, 19, 20, I was 22 when I came over, you would obviously prefer to stay closer to home.
One more question about fighting, kind of a two-parter. First, do you think that it prevents players from overseas or other areas from getting into the game, knowing that if they come over here, they'd have to engage in it? And then the second part is, do you think it's contingent on the leagues to legislate staged fights out of the game, or is it on the players to try to encourage their teammates not to have staged fights?
First question, definitely no. I don't think any European player feels intimidated by the fighting in the NHL. It's not something you have to do. You can play perfectly well, and you can be a tough player too without fighting. And stage fighting, and then if you do anything about it, like Bob McCown was saying, put in a penalty that discourages someone from doing it. You get a game misconduct, maybe suspension. If you want to go that way, that's the way you can handle it, I assume.